Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real World, Real Stories, the podcast where we explore important world events together in clear and careful English. I'm James.
And I'm Olivia. We are so happy you are here with us today.
Before we start, if you are watching on YouTube, please take a second and hit that like button. It really helps other English learners find our channel. And write your country in the comments. We love to see where our listeners are from all around the world.
And if this is your first time here, welcome. This channel is made specifically for people who are learning English and want to understand what is happening in the world. We speak slowly and clearly, we explain difficult words, and we never take political sides.
Okay, now imagine you're driving on a highway and suddenly just one person, closes a gate across the road. All traffic stops. Millions of cars cannot move. Fuel doesn't arrive. Prices go up. And the person who closed the gate says, if you want to pass, you have to negotiate with me.
Now imagine that highway carries 20% of the world's oil every day. That is the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, it is closed.
This is the situation we are going to talk about today. In late February 2026, the United States and Israel attacked military targets in Iran. Iran responded by closing the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important waterways on Earth.
And then President Trump did something surprising. He said, "This is not just America's problem. Other countries need to come and help protect this strait. It's their territory too."
But many countries said no, or not exactly no, but not a clear yes either. And that is the story we are going to explore today.
Why is this strait so important? Why did Trump ask for help? Why did countries refuse? And what happened in the end?
We will answer all of these questions, step by step, calmly, together.
This episode is also a great opportunity to improve your English listening skills. We will use B1 level vocabulary and grammar, and at the end, we have a vocabulary review section with 7 key words and phrases.
So, make yourself comfortable. Let's begin.
Olivia, before we go into the details, let's just take a moment. Why is this story so important right now?
Well, first, it's a live situation. It is happening right now, in March 2026. The strait is still closed. Oil prices are near $100 a barrel. Ships cannot pass. That affects everyone, not just countries in the Middle East.
Exactly, and I think what makes this story especially interesting is it's not just about oil. It's about a bigger question. Who is responsible for protecting international waterways? That question has been asked before in history, and it doesn't have a simple answer.
I agree, and I want to be honest, this is a politically sensitive topic. There are people who support Trump's actions. There are people who are very critical. We are not here to say who is right or wrong.
Absolutely. Our goal today is to understand the situation, to ask questions, and to think together. We will look at the geography, the economics, the key players, and the possible futures.
And we will try to connect all of this to your daily life. Because yes, what happens in a small strait between Iran and Oman can affect the price of petrol in your country, or the cost of your electricity bill, or the price of food in your local shop.
Think about that for a second. A waterway you may never visit can change prices in your city. That's globalization. That's the connected world we live in.
So let's start with the basics. What is the Strait of Hormuz? Where is it? And why does it matter so much?
The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow passage of water. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. Look at a map. It sits between Iran in the north and Oman in the south.
And when we say narrow, we mean it. The navigable channel, the part where big ships can actually sail, is only about 21 nautical miles wide. That is roughly 40 kilometers. Very small for such an important place.
Every single day, approximately 17 million barrels of oil pass through this strait. That's about 20% of the world's total oil supply. Imagine that.
1/5 of all the oil in the world goes through a channel that is 40 kilometers wide.
And it's not just oil. Liquefied natural gas, what we call LNG, also passes through here. Qatar, one of the world's biggest gas exporters, ships almost all of its gas through the Strait of Hormuz.
So if the strait is closed, even for a few weeks, it creates a very serious problem. Countries need oil to produce electricity, to heat homes, to run factories, to move food from farms to shops.
Let me give you a word here, navigable. Navigable. It means possible to travel on by boat. So when we say the navigable channel is 40 kilometers wide, we mean that's the part of the water where large ships can safely travel.
Good word. Now, the question many people ask is, why can't ships just go around the strait? Why not use a different route?
Good question. And the answer is, they can, but it's extremely difficult and expensive. The alternative routes, going around the Arabian Peninsula or using pipelines across Saudi Arabia, are limited in capacity. They simply cannot handle 17 million barrels per day.
So the strait is, as experts call it, a choke point, another vocabulary word. A choke point is a narrow place where traffic can be easily stopped or controlled. Think of a choke point like a narrow door. Many people need to pass through it. If someone stands in the doorway, everything stops.
And Iran knows this. Iran has always known this. For decades, whenever tensions rise between Iran and the West, Iran reminds the world, we can close this door.
And in March 2026, they closed it. Let's go through the key events, because to understand Trump's demand, we need to understand what happened before it.
On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched military strikes against Iran. These strikes targeted military infrastructure. They also resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei.
This was a massive historical event. Iran's supreme leader had held power since 1989. That's nearly 40 years. His death changed everything.
Iran responded quickly. Within days, Iranian forces effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz. They used mines, naval vessels, and the threat of missile strikes to stop international shipping traffic.
Oil prices jumped immediately. WTI crude, that's the American oil price benchmark, rose to nearly $100 a barrel. The global benchmark, Brent crude, reached over $104.
Let me explain those two words. Crude oil, CRUDE, means raw, unprocessed oil. Before oil is refined into petrol or diesel, it is called crude oil. And a benchmark is a standard reference point. When you hear Brent crude at $104, it means the standard international price for a barrel of unprocessed oil is $104.
Iranian officials also made a warning that prices could reach $200 per barrel if the situation continued. $200. For comparison, the price before the crisis was around $75.
So prices have already risen around 30%, and they could rise much more.
This is when Trump made his demand. He said, essentially, other countries use this oil too. Other countries need this strait, so other countries need to come and protect it.
His exact words were something like, I'm demanding that these countries come and help protect their own territory. Because this is their territory. They need it more than we do.
And that's where the story gets very complicated.
Wait, hold on. They need it more than we do. Did Trump actually say that?
Yes.
The United States, one of the biggest oil consumers in the world, needs this strait less than other countries?
Well, America has increased its domestic oil production significantly. It's now one of the world's biggest oil producers itself.
But America still imports oil. America still sells oil globally. The price of oil on world markets affects American companies.
That's true.
So is this really about who needs it more? Or is it about something else, like sharing military costs?
Honestly, I think it's both. The argument has some economic logic, but it's also political.
Right, because asking allies to share costs is not new. But doing it during an active conflict without consulting those allies first, that's a different situation.
Fair point.
Okay, so Trump made his demand, and the initial response from most allies was no, or at least not yet. Why?
There are several reasons, and I think it's important to understand all of them because they each tell us something different.
Let's go through them one by one.
Reason number 1, they were not consulted. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz said clearly, "There is no convincing plan for how this operation can be successful. Washington did not consult us." That is a very significant statement. Allies expect to be included in decisions, especially decisions that could lead to war.
Reason number 2, it's not their war. The United States and Israel made the decision to attack Iran. European countries did not agree to that attack beforehand, so many of them felt, why should we now take the military risk for a conflict we didn't choose to start?
Reason number 3, legal and constitutional limits. Japan, for example, has a constitution that restricts its military activities abroad. Germany also has historical and political reasons to be very careful about sending military forces to active conflict zones.
Reason number 4, the risk is real. This is not a peacekeeping mission. The Strait is in an active war zone. Sending warships there means those ships could be attacked. That means soldiers could die. That is a decision that requires long debate in Parliament, not just a tweet from Trump.
And reason number 5, China. This is interesting. China imports approximately 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. 40%! And yet Iran was apparently allowing Chinese ships to pass through. So China had no economic reason to join an anti-Iranian coalition.
Think about that for a second. China's ships were passing. European ships were not. So the closure was in some ways selective.
Which makes the geopolitical picture even more complex. Here's another vocabulary word, geopolitical. Geopolitical. It means relating to politics as influenced by geography. When we say geopolitical, we're talking about how location, resources, and physical space affect political decisions between countries.
Let's talk about the economic impact, because this is where the story becomes very personal. It affects ordinary people, not just governments.
When oil prices rise, everything rises. Oil is used to produce electricity, to heat homes, to manufacture goods, to transport food. When oil costs more, businesses pay more. And when businesses pay more, they pass that cost to consumers, to you and me.
According to reports, oil prices already rose from approximately $75 to nearly $105 per barrel in just a few days. That's a 40% increase.
40%. Imagine if your electricity bill suddenly became 40% more expensive, or the price of petrol at the pump.
And for some countries, this is catastrophic. Japan, South Korea, India, these countries import the vast majority of their oil from the Middle East. Japan imports approximately 95% of its oil from that region.
95%. That number is extraordinary. Japan is a highly developed, industrialized country, and it is almost entirely dependent on Middle Eastern oil that travels through the Strait of Hormuz.
This is actually one of the main reasons Japan eventually joined the international statement, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Let me give you an economic term, supply chain. A supply chain is the system of steps needed to produce and deliver a product. Oil travels through a supply chain, from the oil well in Saudi Arabia, through the Strait of Hormuz, across the ocean, to a refinery in Japan, to a petrol station near your home. If any part of that chain breaks, everything is affected.
And right now, the Strait of Hormuz is the broken link in that chain for millions of people around the world.
Here's something I want to ask you, our listener. Do you know where the petrol in your country comes from? Do you know if your country imports oil from the Middle East? Ask yourself, how connected is your country to this strait?
Okay, I want to come back to China, because I think this is the most interesting part of the whole story.
Go ahead.
China imports 40% of its oil through Hormuz. The strait is basically closed, but China's getting its oil anyway because Iran is letting Chinese ships through, so China has very little economic pressure to help.
Right.
But here's what I find remarkable. China called for a ceasefire. for peace negotiations. They were actually diplomatic.
They called for a ceasefire that protects their own shipping. That's not exactly diplomacy. That's protecting your interests while calling it diplomacy.
Wait, is that fair? You could say the same about every country.
Sure, but there's a difference. When France says, we support efforts for peace, they're not receiving discounted oil from Iran at the same time.
That's a good point.
China is benefiting from the crisis. While everyone else is paying $100 a barrel, China might be getting Iranian oil much cheaper.
We don't know that for certain.
We don't, but it's a logical assumption, and it explains a lot about why China is not interested in joining any coalition.
It does explain it, even if it's uncomfortable.
So initially, allies refused. Trump was frustrated. He called them, reportedly, cowards. He warned that the United States would remember who helped and who didn't. Strong language.
Very strong. And that created an interesting dilemma for European countries and Japan. On one side, they didn't want to join a military operation they weren't consulted about. On the other side, they couldn't afford to permanently damage their relationship with the United States.
Here's a historical parallel that I find helpful. In the 1980s, there was a similar crisis called the Tanker War. Iran and Iraq were in conflict, and both sides were attacking oil tankers in the Persian Gulf. At that time, the United States launched Operation Earnest Will, a large mission to protect oil tankers passing through the region. Several other countries contributed: the UK, France, the Netherlands, Italy, Belgium. The coalition worked. The shipping lanes stayed open.
So this kind of multilateral, meaning involving many countries, maritime protection mission has happened before. It's not a new idea.
Exactly. And that history was probably part of the conversations happening in March 2026.
And then, on March 19th, something significant happened. 7 countries issued a joint statement. The UK, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada. They expressed, and I want to choose these words carefully, readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait.
That's diplomatic language. Readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts. It doesn't say we are sending warships tomorrow, but it says we are not saying no anymore.
And later, more countries joined. South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Bahrain, UAE, and several Nordic and Baltic states.
So within about a week, the situation changed from near total Allied refusal to a significant coalition statement.
But I want to be honest with our listeners. The statement is not the same as action. France, Germany, Italy, and Japan had all previously said they would not send warships while active conflict was ongoing. The statement expressed support in principle.
That's an important distinction. In principle, this phrase means as a general idea, agreeing with the concept, but it doesn't always mean full practical commitment. Let's spend a moment on the key players in the situation, because understanding who is involved helps us understand why things are happening.
First, the United States. The U.S. launched the strikes against Iran and is now the primary military force in the region. The U.S. military is conducting operations in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Trump wants allies to share this burden, militarily and financially.
Second, the United Kingdom. Britain has been America's closest ally in this situation. They sent military officers to the U.S. Central Command headquarters in Florida. They moved 2 Royal Navy vessels to the region. They were the first European nation to signal real commitment.
Third, Germany. Germany has been the most cautious. Chancellor Merz said clearly that Germany needs a convincing plan before it can participate. Germany has constitutional and historical reasons to be very careful about military operations abroad. This is a country that, after World War II, built its entire foreign policy around peace and multilateralism.
Fourth, France. France has its own military presence in the region, but France was also very vocal about one thing. This will not be a NATO mission. France wanted to keep NATO out of it, to avoid the alliance being dragged into what is essentially a US-led conflict.
Fifth, Japan. Japan's situation is perhaps the most difficult. 95% of its oil comes from the Middle East, but Japan's constitution restricts overseas military activity. Japan signed the joint statement. but what Japan can actually do militarily is limited.
And sixth, China. As we discussed, China is in a unique position. It imports huge amounts of Middle Eastern oil, but it's also a close economic partner of Iran, and it's not joining any Western-led coalition.
Imagine this like a chess game. Everyone is watching their pieces very carefully. No one wants to make a move that loses them a queen. James, I want to ask you something directly.
God?
While governments are debating joint statements and diplomatic language, who is actually paying the price right now?
Well, oil prices are high. Businesses are affected.
No, I mean the actual people. The truck driver in Italy who needs diesel, the family in Tokyo paying more for electricity, the small restaurant owner in Seoul whose delivery costs just increased.
Yes, those people.
They didn't make any decisions about Iran. They didn't vote for these strikes. They didn't close the strait. But they are the ones paying 40% more for energy.
That's true.
And if this continues for months, not weeks, months, what happens to those people?
Economic pressure increases. Inflation rises. Some businesses close. Lower-income households are hit the hardest.
Exactly, and I don't think that's in the joint statements. The statements talk about safe passage and appropriate efforts. They don't mention the single mother in Germany who is already struggling with her heating bill.
No, they don't. And I think you're right that we need to hold both things in mind, the strategic picture and the human cost.
That's all I'm asking.
Let's look ahead. What could happen next? There are a few realistic scenarios.
Let me describe each one calmly and clearly, because the goal is understanding, not fear.
Scenario 1. Diplomatic resolution. Iran and the United States reach some kind of agreement. The strait reopens. Oil prices fall. This is possible because Iran, despite everything, needs oil revenue too. A closed strait hurts Iran economically as well.
This scenario is possible, but it requires both sides to want to negotiate. And right now, with Iran's supreme leader gone and a new leadership structure still forming, it's unclear who America can actually negotiate with.
That's a real challenge. When a government is in transition, when the person at the top has just died, it can take time before the new leadership has enough authority to make decisions.
Scenario 2. Coalition Maritime Operation. The joint statement becomes a real military coalition. Warships from multiple countries escort oil tankers through the strait. The strait is effectively reopened by force of presence, not by combat, but by deterrence.
Deterrence, D-E-T-E-R-R-E-N-C-E, is an important word here. Deterrence means preventing someone from doing something by making them afraid of the consequences. If Iran sees 20 warships from 10 countries in the region, it might decide not to attack. That's deterrence.
This scenario is plausible, but it carries risks. One incident, one ship fired upon, one sailor injured, could escalate the situation dramatically.
Scenario 3. Extended crisis. No agreement is reached. The coalition is slow to form. Oil prices stay high or rise further. The global economy suffers. This is the scenario that keeps economists awake at night.
And for ordinary people, this would mean continued high energy prices, possible shortages of certain goods, and in some countries, economic recession. A recession means a period when the economy shrinks. Businesses lose money, people lose jobs.
None of these scenarios is certain. The world is watching, and the decisions made in the next few weeks will have consequences for years.
Let's be honest about the challenges. Even if countries want to help, it is not simple.
First challenge, who commands the operation? If 10 countries send warships, who gives the orders? The US? NATO? A new ad hoc coalition? Britain already said clearly, this will not be a NATO mission, so the command structure is unclear.
Second challenge, rules of engagement. In military operations, rules of engagement means the rules that define when and how soldiers can use force. Different countries have different rules. A French warship and a British warship in the same place might respond very differently to an Iranian threat. That creates dangerous confusion.
Third challenge, domestic politics. Every government in this coalition has a parliament, and every parliament has members who will ask hard questions. Why are we sending our sailors into a war zone started by America? That debate will happen. It may limit how much each country can actually contribute.
Fourth challenge, Iran's unpredictability. Iran is currently in political transition. A new leadership is forming. In such moments, countries can sometimes make more extreme decisions, trying to show strength in a moment of vulnerability.
And fifth challenge, duration. A military presence in the Strait costs money. Every day a warship operates there costs millions. How long can countries sustain that? Weeks? Months? Years?
These are not reasons for despair. They are reasons for careful, patient diplomacy. As we said at the beginning, the goal is to understand, not to fear.
Whatever happens in the next few weeks, this crisis will have long-term effects. Let's think about what they might be.
First, energy transition. Every time oil prices spike sharply, countries are reminded of how vulnerable they are to disruptions in oil supply. This historically leads to increased investment in renewable energy, nuclear power, and domestic energy production.
Think about the 1973 oil crisis. OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, cut oil supplies to the West. Prices quadrupled. It was painful, but it also led to major investments in energy efficiency and alternative energy research.
So, painful events can sometimes produce long-term changes that are actually positive. That doesn't make the pain acceptable, but it does mean something can come from it.
Second, alliance restructuring. The way Trump demanded help, without consultation, with public pressure and insults, has damaged trust. Even countries that joined the joint statement did so reluctantly. The relationship between the U.S. and its European allies is under significant stress.
Third, strategic importance of Hormuz long-term. If the world gradually moves toward renewable energy, solar, wind, hydrogen, the importance of oil choke points like Hormuz decreases. Over 20 or 30 years, the political power that Iran holds, controlling that narrow strait, could decline.
That's a long timeline, but it's worth keeping in mind. The world we live in 2026 is already different from the world of 2000, and the world of 2046 will be different again.
For our English learners, this is a good example of thinking in the long term. We use phrases like in the long run, over the next decade, in the coming years. These phrases help us talk about future change calmly and thoughtfully.
All right, let's do our vocabulary review. Olivia and I mentioned several key words and phrases today. Let's go through them together.
Word number 1, navigable. This means possible to travel on by boat or ship. Example, the navigable channel through the Strait of Hormuz is only 40 kilometers wide.
Word number 2, chokepoint. A narrow place where movement can be easily stopped or controlled. Example, the Strait of Hormuz is a critical choke point for global oil supplies.
Word number 3, crude oil. Raw, unprocessed oil before it becomes petrol or other products. Example, the price of crude oil rose to over $100 per barrel.
Word number 4, supply chain. The system of steps needed to produce and deliver a product. Example, when the strait closed, it broke the supply chain for oil reaching Asia.
Word number 5, geopolitical. Relating to politics as influenced by geography. Example, the Strait of Hormuz has enormous geopolitical importance.
Word number 6, deterrence. Preventing someone from doing something by making them fear the consequences. Example, a naval coalition in the strait would act as a deterrence against Iranian attacks.
And word number 7, in principle. Agreeing with a general idea, but not necessarily with every practical detail. Example, the 7 countries agreed in principle to support efforts to secure the strait.
Now here's why these words matter for your English. These are the kinds of words you will hear in news broadcasts, in academic lectures, in business meetings. If you want to understand the world and talk about it confidently, these words are your tools.
Practice them. Use them when you speak with friends. Write a sentence with each one. Tell us in the comments which word is new for you today.
We are near the end of today's episode. Let's summarize what we have learned.
Lesson 1. Geography matters. The Strait of Hormuz is only 40 kilometers wide, but through it flows 20% of the world's oil. Its location makes it one of the most strategically important places on Earth.
Lesson 2. Alliances are complex. Countries that share values and are military allies do not always agree automatically. Trust, consultation, and shared decision-making are the foundations of alliance. When those are missing, even the closest allies hesitate.
Lesson 3. Economic and human costs are connected. When international shipping is disrupted, ordinary people pay higher prices for energy, food, and goods. Global events are not abstract, they reach into your home.
Lesson 4. Crises can lead to change. History shows that difficult moments often push countries and economies toward important long-term changes. Energy crises have accelerated the shift to renewable energy before. They may do so again.
And one final thought. Slow down when you watch the news. It is very easy to read a headline and feel immediately anxious or angry. Our goal on this channel is to help you slow down, read deeply, ask questions, understand the context.
That is true for learning English too. Slow listening, patient reading, regular practice, these are the habits that actually improve your language skills.
If you found this episode useful, please share it with a friend who is also learning English. It would mean a lot to us.
And if you are watching on YouTube, leave a comment with your country and your thoughts on today's topic. Do you think countries were right to refuse at first? Do you think the joint statement is enough? We want to hear from you.
Like, subscribe, and join us for our next episode. Every week we bring you real stories from the real world in clear, careful English.
The world is complex, but it becomes a little less complicated when we learn to observe it calmly, with curiosity and patience.
That's a skill worth developing, in English and in life.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.
Bye for now.